Welcome to the training session on precision teaching. This project is a collaboration between researchers at Bangor University and the Regional School Effectiveness and Improvement Service for North Wales, GWER. Throughout today's session, we will be drawing from external research in this field. If you are interested in reading some of the seminal papers and books on this topic, you'll be able to find the references at the bottom of the slides. Before we get started, I want to highlight that whilst today's session mainly embeds these concepts and examples of mathematics and numeracy, they can also be applied to other subjects across the curriculum. You can apply them with learners in primary and secondary education and even beyond. On this slide and the next, you'll be able to see the timestamps for the different sections of this training. If you're revisiting this presentation for a recap on a particular aspect, you can fast forward to the corresponding part of the video now. For those of you joining for the first time, today's session will cover some of the underlying rationale in support of fluency training. We will identify the key features of precision teaching and walk through how to use the standard acceleration chart to plot scores and monitor progress. Following this, we will discuss how to interpret and use learning pictures before covering some example resources and activities that you can use to build fluency within your classroom. Okay, so let's jump in. Skills build on top of one another, much like a brick wall. Every academic discipline can be broken down into topics, and each topic into skills. Those skills can be further categorised into either tool skills, component skills, or composite skills. Tool skills form the foundation of the wall. These are the lowest level skills that a pupil needs to have in their repertoire before they can complete the preceding activities within the lesson or an intervention programme. Skills that depend on one or more tool skill are referred to as component skills, and a culmination of component skills results in a composite skill, which is the highest level skill for a given topic. In order to build up skill repertoires, learners need to have fluent foundations in place. When thinking about types of skills, it is important to describe them in the context of how a pupil processes the information and how they respond. This is because different learning channels correspond to different fluency aims. When describing a learning channel, you first say how the information is presented to the pupil, and then follow it with how they should respond. For example, if pupils have to say the answers to questions that are presented to them in written form, the learning channel would be see-say. If they see the question and write the answer, the channel would be see-write. If the task requires transcription, the learning channel would be either hear-type or hear-write. And if you want to assess how many words a pupil can write for a story that they've made up or a retelling in their own words, the learning channel would be think-write. It's important to note that if a particular learning channel isn't working for a pupil, you might be able to change the task and assess progress another way. Traditionally, throughout education, there is a view that pupils have mastered a skill if they're able to answer 80 to 100% of questions about it correctly. However, there's an argument to be made that this view is too simplistic. If we want to provide pupils with the solid foundations that they need to access higher order content, we should add a dimension of time into assessment and turn our attention towards fluency building. Research has demonstrated that being fluent at a skill makes it more likely that pupils will achieve 4 associated learning outcomes. These are retention, endurance, stability, and application. Retention refers to a pupil's ability to perform the skill at the same level of speed and accuracy, even after a prolonged period of time without practicing it. Typically, fluency timings are short, but being truly fluent means that pupils can perform the skill for prolonged periods of time without slowing down. Stability refers to a pupil's ability to perform a skill in the presence of distraction. And finally, application is the ability for a pupil to generalise the skills that they have been practicing to other untaught questions and related skills. You can pause the next 3 slides to get an idea of the speed that pupils need to be working at to demonstrate fluency of key tool skills in maths, reading and writing. The numbers in the fluency aim column reflect the number of correct units a pupil needs to be able to perform in a given time to demonstrate fluency. We will touch on acceleration aims later in the session. These are just a few examples of skills that you might choose to focus on, but it is by no means an exhaustive list. It's useful to think about how these skills work together too. For example, in order to see-write paper-based maths questions at a rate of 80 correct answers per minute, pupils need to be able to think-write digits 0 to 9 fluently too. Here are the fluency aims for writing and reading. You can find a full list of published aims in the book referenced at the bottom of the slide, or by simply Googling the term published fluency aims. If you're new to the idea of fluency training, here's some advice to help you get started. Fluency time trials are designed to be short to help pupils keep focused and reduce fatigue. Typically, each time trial is between 1 and 5 minutes. Pupils should run time trials regularly, ideally each day, to help them contact the material and make accelerated progress. Without regularity, it's hard to build momentum, and the assessment focus shifts away from fluency progression and towards retention. Time trials don't have to be daunting. Frame them as a game rather than a test, and set pupils an aim to beat their personal best score. If possible, encourage pupils to plot their own scores. This will help them to reflect upon their own progress and gain a level of autonomy in their learning. If they can see their scores improving, it may help motivate them to stay engaged. If they notice that their scores are starting to flatline, they can ask for help. This way you can teach to requests rather than covering what they already know. During the time trial, encourage pupils to maintain a fast pace and to not worry about making mistakes. Before beginning fluency timings, pupils should already be able to perform the skill at high levels of accuracy, so they don't need to receive feedback immediately after every answer. They will have the opportunity to address any hesitations or mistakes after the timing is finished, without being timed. Crucially, to help pupils stay on task and prevent prolonged periods of non-progression, it's important to review data regularly. This advice has clear applications when considering precision teaching. Despite what the name may suggest, precision teaching is not a method of teaching. It's a system that allows us to assess both learning and the effectiveness of teaching on a pupil-by-pupil basis. There are 3 key ideas that underlie precision teaching. A common theme in today's training is that teachers and pupils should monitor fluency regularly. By doing this, they can develop pictures of a pupil's learning and act quickly to keep them on track. Improvements in learning are greater when the pupil themselves take an active role in this process. As such, we should encourage learners to record their own data on a standard acceleration chart and use it to guide their future study. Precision teaching programs can help pupils to learn helpful study skills, like knowing when to ask for help. The final principle is that the learner knows best. Every pupil is on their own learning journey and their experiences will be unique. This journey will be influenced by their biology, their environment, and how they've been taught specific skills. Due to this uniqueness, we can't apply a one-size-fits-all approach to teaching that the pupils receive. When running time trials in class, pupils can be practicing different skills to one another. If their scores are improving, the teaching and task is right for them. If their scores are not improving, then intervention may be necessary. To design a program using precision teaching, there are 5 stages that you should adhere to. These are listed on the slide and I will define each one for you now. First, pinpoint. When designing an assessment for a time trial, you must first identify what skill you want the pupil to practice. This skill should be both specific and countable. You should identify the learning channel, the time period for each time trial, and what you would count as a correct and incorrect response. For example, if you wanted pupils to improve their single to single digit addition skills using a worksheet task, the pinpoint might be see question, right answer for single digit addition sums. You would score answer digits as correct or incorrect across a 1-minute time trial. Second, prepare. You need to determine what score reflects fluency for that skill. If there are no published benchmarks for this skill, you may need to ask someone who is already fluent to try it and use that as a guide. You'll then need to prepare the resources and questions that the pupils will need to complete their time trial. Crucially, you want to make sure that you don't place any ceilings on performance. You should provide more questions than pupils can answer within the allocated time period. You also want to make sure that there is enough variety between trials to ensure that pupils are not simply rote learning the order of the answers. If you're using maths worksheets, for example, you should have a bank of 10 randomised worksheets for each skill so that they can rotate between them. During the prepare stage, you will also need to teach any skills that pupils need so that they're able to confidently focus on fluency rather than accuracy during the time trials. Third, collect data through frequent time trials, ideally daily but at least 3 times per week. Fourth, plot data. Pupils should chart their highest daily score for each session to develop learning pictures. And finally, we should use these learning pictures to make data-informed decisions about how to proceed. We will discuss learning pictures in more detail later. Okay, so I've mentioned the standard acceleration chart, but what is it? This is a specialised chart that is one of the hallmark features of precision teaching. The chart enables us to record, visualise and interpret data using a standardised scale. This makes it more honest as you can't manipulate the axes to make improvements look visually more impressive than they are. Once you've learnt how to use it, it also saves time as you won't have to describe your unique charting systems anymore. On this slide you can see 3 unstandardised charts. Despite displaying the same data, they use different interval scales on the axes to make them look visually different. This can make interpreting non-standardised data confusing and more time-consuming. This is what the daily per minute standard acceleration chart looks like. The book referenced on the slide is a fantastic free resource if you're interested in finding out more about the chart. We'll cover the key features that you will need to know to use the chart in your classroom during this session, but if you are interested in additional ways to use the chart, then please do give this PDF a read. You can buy printed versions of this chart in bulk from the Behaviour Research Company. These charts will look the same as the pictures on the following slides. However, please be aware that these need to be shipped from the United States, so shipping costs may be pricey. You can also download and print a free PDF version from the link noted on this slide. The labels at the bottom of the chart are slightly different, but not enough so that you won't be able to follow along with the rest of the training. You'll be able to plot and visualise data in exactly the same way. If you're going to print your own versions of the chart, we recommend that you print them out in colour rather than black and white. Plotting data on top of the blue lines will make it easier for you to see your pencil markings. We will leave the hyperlinks to these sites in the video description box for your convenience. We appreciate that this chart might look a bit overwhelming at first glance, but we're going to walk through it step by step. If you have any questions, we've provided some contact details and information about support on the last slide during this training. You can use this chart to plot any type of human behaviour, from something low frequency that only occurs once per 24 hours, or high frequency behaviour that can occur up to 1,000 times per minute. The thicker vertical lines on the chart denote Sundays. In the leftmost corner, you'll see the days of the week labelled as a prompt. Note here that the first date that you will label on the chart is known as the synchronisation date, and this is always a Sunday. All of the thinner vertical lines denote every other day of the week, from Monday to Saturday. This means that you can record daily behaviour across 20 consecutive weeks all on one chart. The scale on the left-hand side of the chart can seem a bit strange if you haven't used a multiply-divide scale before, so this rhyme will help you to read each of the horizontal lines on the chart. The numbers on the side that start with 1 tell you what to count in and where to count from. The next few slides illustrate this. So starting at 1, you'd count up in ones until you reach 10. Notice that the 5 here doesn't change what you're counting in. This is because it doesn't start with a 1. Just treat it as a waymark to assist you with plotting data. Starting with 10, you'll count in tens until you reach 100. And starting at 100, you will count in hundreds until you reach 1000. This counting system is mirrored at the bottom of the chart, starting with 0.001. Because this chart can be used for a range of different behaviours, including academic learning, you will need to standardise the scores that you collect. This is a count per minute chart, so you will need to convert all of the scores as if they occurred within 1 minute timings. To do this, you will need to divide the pupil's score for their best trial by the time of the trial in minutes. You'll need to do this for both corrects and errors, or, more positively termed, not yets. So let's work through an example. If you'd like to pause the training here to print out a copy of the chart and follow along, please do. When filling out the chart, we recommend using a well-sharpened or mechanical pencil rather than a pen, so you can easily rub out any mistakes. When you start a new chart for or with a pupil, start by filling out all the dates at the top. This will make it easier for you to plot the data as the days and weeks go by. There are spaces denoted on the chart to label every fourth Sunday. As a personal preference, I like to label all of the Sundays in between too. You'll then want to fill out the labels at the bottom of the chart in line with the descriptions on screen. There should be enough detail here for anyone to pick up the chart and know everything that they need to know about whose data they're looking at, what skill the pupil is practicing, and who is monitoring their progress. Remember, one chart is used for one pupil only. So now the labels surrounding the chart are complete, we can start plotting a pupil's scores. This chart belongs to a pupil called Fion. In the white box, you'll see Fion's scores for the date September 6th. She completed 3 time trials, so we're going to plot her best score for the day, which is 39 correct responses and 1 not yet. This trial lasted 1 minute, so we don't need to divide her score, because 39 divided by 1 would still be 39. To plot this data, the first thing that you'll need to do is find the date 6th of September along the top and follow that line down. Then, take a look at the section labelled Counting Times on the right and find 1 minute as it was a 1 minute timing. Where the date and the counting time intersect, you'll want to draw a small horizontal line. This is to denote what is referred to as the timing bar. This lets people know how long the time trial lasted. Now we can use the scale on the left-hand side to plot our scores. So let's plot Fion's correct score, which was 39. We estimate where 39 would fall on the axes and follow this along to plot a dot on the 6th of September. Corrects are always denoted as a dot. Repeat for Fion's not yets. On this day, she got 1 not yet, which we're going to draw as a cross. Let's plot the outcome of another 1 minute time trial for the same pupil. This time 2 days later on the 8th of September. All of the information you need to follow along here is in the white box. Fion completed 3 time trials, so we're going to plot her best score for the day, which was 41 correct responses and 0 not yets. This trial lasted 1 minute, so we don't need to divide her score, because 41 divided by 1 will still be 41. Find the corresponding date, 8th of September, along the top, and then take a look at the counting time section labelled on the right. Find 1 minute, and where the date and timing period intersect, draw the timing bar. Now, plot Fion's correct score of 41 using a dot. And repeat for her not yets. On this day, Fion didn't get any not yets on her best timing, so we're going to note that as a question mark just below the timing bar. The reason that we use a question mark to denote zeros is because we don't know whether she would have had any learning opportunities if the time trial had been longer. There also isn't a line for 0 on the chart, so to avoid confusion, it's easier to use a different symbol. Let's do another. This time, each time trial lasted for 5 minutes, so we do need to standardise the score. We're going to start by doing the same thing. Find the corresponding date using the axes at the top. This data reflects trials conducted on the 10th of September. Then glance over to the counting times. This time you will need to follow the 5 minute line. Draw your timing bar where these 2 lines intersect. Fion's highest score for the day was 207 cards correct, which when divided by 5, because the trial lasted 5 minutes, equals 41.4. So find 41.4 using the left-hand axes and plot the corrects with a dot. On the same trial, Fion placed 2 cards in her not yet pile. 2 divided by 5 is 0.4. So find 0.4 using the left-hand axes and plot the cross. Last example to help further illustrate standardising scores. This time, each trial lasted for 3 minutes. Find 13th of September along the top, then glance over to the counting times and find the 3 minute line. Draw your timing bar where these 2 lines intersect. Fion's highest correct score for the day was 135, which when divided by 3, because the trial lasted 3 minutes, equals 45. So find 45 using the left-hand axes and plot her dot. Fionn didn't place any cards in her not yet pile for this timing, so you plot the question mark underneath the timing bar. We can use pupils' plotted scores on the standard acceleration chart to set attainable and realistic goals for future sessions. Using a goal-focused approach can help keep pupils motivated and bring focus away from unhealthy and unnecessary peer competition. To the left of the chart, you might have noticed this fan-like illustration. This reflects acceleration targets. The term acceleration is a derivative of acceleration and deceleration. Perhaps unsurprisingly, we want pupils' correct scores to accelerate or increase towards their fluency aim, and their not yets to decelerate or decrease towards 0. To evidence learning, pupils' corrects typically accelerate at a rate of times 1.4. However, if you're using precision teaching with a group of pupils who need a bit of extra support, you might want to aim for a times 2 target to help them make quicker progress. A times 2 acceleration means that a pupil will double their score each week. To set daily goals, take a pupil's last score and double it. This is the score that they will need to achieve in 7 days' time. Draw on a target acceleration line between these 2 data points. In order to stay on track, the pupil's scores will either need to meet or exceed this line. If 3 consecutive dots fall below this line, consider intervening. For example, you may need to focus on building fluency of a different tool or component skill first, or increase the number of time trials that the pupil runs each day. I've mentioned learning pictures several times now. This simply refers to the pattern of data displayed on the chart. There are 13 different types of learning pictures that can be placed into 3 broad categories: improving, maintaining, and worsening. Improving pictures mean that pupils are working towards their fluency aim. As long as they're heading there at the acceleration that you are aiming for, there is no need to intervene. Maintaining pictures occur when a pupil's corrects stop accelerating. The aim picture means that they are performing skills as fluently as they possibly can be, and they're ready to move on to a more complex skill. Get tracking suggests that pupils either have a tool skill deficit that is inhibiting their ability to perform the task fluently, or they are only able to answer a sample of the questions accurately. Rock bottom suggests either an engagement issue or that the skill is far too challenging and that the pupil needs to practice lower order tool skills first. Finally, worsening pictures reflect that pupils' fluency is decelerating. This could suggest that they need some additional instruction to understand the task or concepts, or an intervention targeting engagement is necessary. As a general rule, if a pupil's data shows a maintaining or worsening pictures over 3 consecutive sessions, this is a pattern rather than just a bad day. Consider an intervention to prevent prolonged periods of non-progression. An intervention here is defined as any change that intends to improve fluency. It's important that you only make one change at a time to pinpoint what works and what doesn't, and to avoid wasting any unnecessary resources. On this slide, you can see a list of example interventions that you might want to consider if a pupil isn't making desired progress towards their fluency aim. This is not a full list of the possibilities. Examples include choosing to focus on different complementary component or tool skills, assessing skills through different and more appropriate learning channels, using goal-setting acceleration lines to push for steeper gains, increasing the number of time trials pupils complete per week, teaching pupils new strategies to reach answers more fluently, integrating reward systems such as Class Dojo into the sessions to promote engagement and awarding certificates when pupils master packs. And as a final example, you may decide to change the classroom seating arrangements to promote focus and prevent unhealthy peer competition. When you make a change to the task, skill, or classroom environment that intends to impact fluency, draw this on the chart as a vertical line and give it a brief but informative label. This will help you to keep track of what changes you've already made and make it easier for you to track the effects. You can add any additional annotations to this chart that you think are important for context. For example, you might want to make a note of when a pupil is off school ill to explain missing data points, or school holidays to see the effect that it has had on skill retention. This part of the training aims to bring everything together and help you to start thinking about the fluency-based activities that you might want to use to assess skills within your classroom. The first thing that you will need to do is pinpoint the skill that you want to assess. Be specific and consider what the most appropriate learning channel might be. You or the pupils themselves will then need to create the materials that they need to assess the skill. It's important that they have more questions than they could possibly answer in the given time period for each time trial to ensure that the focus remains on fluency. You should also be wary of whether the task lends itself to serial learning. It's important that there are enough versions of the task to prevent the pupils simply rote learning the order of the answers. You may need several versions of a worksheet or cards that they can shuffle between each time trial. Before moving any pupil onto a more complex skill, it's also important to validate their scores, to check that they are able to perform the skill as fluently as the scores that they have been writing down. Ask them to do an observed timing. The next few slides provide some examples of tasks. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of the activities that you can apply precision teaching to. Don't be afraid to be creative and design your own activities. If you're doing any worksheet-based tasks that requires pupils to write their responses, you may need to start by focusing on writing tool skills first. Ask pupils to write either the alphabet or numbers 0 through 9 over and over again for 1 minute. A correct point for this task would be awarded for each character that is legibly written with good formation and positioning on the line. A not yet point would be awarded for any character that is illegible in the wrong formation, such as M before N, or is not correctly formed above the line. The fluency aim for this task is 130 correct characters per minute. Say or Fast Minute Everyday Shuffled, or SAFMEDS, is an empirically supported flashcard strategy derived from precision teaching. It can be a helpful strategy for pupils to use to build fluency of fact-based skills. We have a separate training session dedicated to this if you're interested in learning more. We've also developed flashcard resources to support the foundation phase through to Key Stage 3 numeracy curriculum in Wales. These resources and training are available for free on the GWER Support Centre. The links to the English and Cymraeg resources are at the bottom of the slides, and we have also put them in the YouTube description box for ease of access. For questions that require pupils to note down their working out steps, worksheet-based tasks might be a more appropriate alternative to flashcards. Likewise, you can use worksheets to help pupils build sight reading fluency of high-frequency words, nonsense words, or even story passages. You could also use worksheets to help facilitate rapid automatised naming, object or letter tasks, more frequently referred to as RAN. You can adapt the learning channel based on what is most appropriate for the skill being assessed. If you work with pupils who are preparing for their GCSE or A-level exams, you might want to turn their focus towards past paper questions. You could pull together a bank of similar questions on a topic and have them practice for 5-minute time trials. This can be useful to help pupils to not only master subject content, but also help keep to time during their exams. When defining a correct and not yet response, you could score method marks or correctly formed words written. That draws our introduction to precision teaching to a close. We hope that this has provided you with some tools and thoughts to help pupils build fluency of key skills within your classroom. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact Katie. Her email address is on screen now. We also offer monthly drop-in sessions to support the use of SAFMEDS and precision teaching in schools across the GWER region. If you'd like to access this support, check the GWER bulletin for dates and the booking link.